Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Contemporary Issues class. We're going to have a good discussion today on heaven and hell, some of the basics of the faith. And we're so pleased to have Steve Starliper here with us to present on the C.S. Lewis book, The Great Divorce, a classic that many of us have read. I read it this week for the first time in 20 or 30 years, and it really holds up over time. So too. I'm Steve, the leader of the class, and I want to welcome folks who are here for the first time, including Katrina. Welcome. She had been to church here many years ago and is returning to visit. So nice to have you here too, and other folks. I know we've got some other new folks here too, so I want to welcome all of you here. And hi, Ron, come on in, find wherever you can find. Before we get started, our usual announcements, Zoomers, nice to have you here too. About 6 people on Zoom. Hi, Lola. And we are asking you to mute yourself when you're not speaking so we can keep the background noise down. Lower left corner is the mute button for you Zoomers. Thank you. And we are recording this for future playback on YouTube for folks who can't be here. We sometimes have 40 or 50 views on YouTube after our class, so we are glad to preserve these classes for the future. Want to welcome Bob and Jan back from Arizona. Here's some of the snowbirds in St. Andrew. Did you have a good time in Arizona?
We had a great time.
Good weather? Yeah, good. You know, the wind here was only 91 degrees, 91 miles an hour at Copper Mountain yesterday. Said on the news. You're good for that. Good. Anybody else want to share? Anybody else been traveling or have anything you want to share? Next week in this class, we're going to talk about this book, God After Deconstruction, and this is the speaker that will be here this Friday and Saturday also to talk about how to redo your faith, drop things that don't seem to work, and build a new theology. So it'll be a good conference on Friday and Saturday if you want to sign up and come on the St. Andrew website. Any other announcements? Yes, Vicki.
Alice and I are talking about a potluck again, probably end of May into June sometime. So kind of keep that open. And I think what we'll do is maybe try to have it in a different room next time, because it was kind of, we got a little noisy for the people that meet in this class afterwards. So all to be announced later. And I also think it's probably about time, maybe next week we can take an offering again for our market. The school market, because what's an East Elementary market, you know,
All
so we
donated
might do that again next.
$300 last time we did this.
$300, and they were
Great.
very appreciative of that, so we'll do that again next week, so.
Great. Okay. Steve Starliper is a teacher in other classes here at St. Andrew and a tech expert from your career, technology. And
That's a high pedestal.
it is a high pedestal, that's right. And so he has a slideshow today and gonna run through the slides and a review of this book pretty quickly, and then have some time at the end for discussion.
Sure, absolutely.
And questions, sure. So we want to know what you all think about heaven and hell and the presentation in this book, which is very interesting. C.S. Lewis was, as many of you know, an academic in England that wrote the Narnia Chronicles and many other books. So, okay, Steve, thank you.
Thank you, thanks. I think I'll make one amendment to that comment, and I like questions as we go, so it's good. You know, that's where I think most of the good discussion comes from. So if you have anything you want to just interject, feel free to do so. So this is for all of you and for our collective journey. So as Steve was mentioning, I love C.S. Lewis. I'll just start there. I taught several classes on him in the Pathways days. In fact, this is one of them that I adapted for this class. Normally, people read it and then it's like 2 or 3 classes. So these slides I narrowed down, skinnied down a little bit and made it so, assuming you didn't read the book. Yeah.
You have a microphone?
Oh, do I have a microphone? Yes, is that, oh my gosh. I feel like Moses or Charles Heston or something, you know, when they're on the mountains or. Thank you, appreciate
I
that.
gotta change things again.
Oh, no. Okay, now I went from a slight murmur to a booming. Is that too loud? No, okay, all right, good. So let's see. And people on the Zoom, can you see? We go to slide mode?
We'll do our tech thing
Oh,
here,
there we go.
Zoom slideshow.
Okay.
See if that'll work now.
Let's see. Oh. Hey Greg, can you see me changing slides? He's on Zoom.
Right
I
now
can.
I've got,
Okay, okay, so you can see that. Okay, perfect. So,
It's showing up different on there
yeah.
than it is on our
Okay,
screen
and
here,
I'll just
but
look at,
that's
this one over
computers
here.
for you. Okay.
so the outline for today is, as I mentioned, open discussion. You know, I'm here for you, and I think we get the most out of the discussion by discussing. So just interject at any time if anything befuddles you, or you're saying, oh my goodness. I would almost guarantee 5 to 10 more people have those exact same thoughts or questions. Interactive, obviously, I always like to call it a journey of discovery or ahas. And there aren't any dumb questions at all. The objective for today is the Great Divorce. It's interesting, and as I said, I love C.S. Lewis. It's similar to the Chronicles of Narnia. It's written as a fable. Okay, C.S. Lewis wrote some very thick treatises and all that stuff, but he also wrote, as we all well know in the theaters and all that, the Chronicles of Narnia and also the Great Divorce. I want to explore Lewis's theology, his concept of, and I'm putting in quotes on purpose, heaven and hell, because I think, as you'll quickly find out, our pre-notions, including my own, of heaven and hell are very different from C.S. Lewis's. He wrote this about the time right after the Civil War, just to give you a rough idea. And then the concepts of heaven and hell, and also God's role. How do we, again in quotes, get in? I think you'll quickly realize that they're getting in is a different concept. Told in the fable format, the theology was so revolutionary at the time that he wrote it as a fable. And it's conveyed metaphorically. So, and ironically, Amy, for those of you who were in the earlier service, she referenced Rob Bell's book. And Rob Bell, in fact, Rob actually was a guest here of many years ago, probably 10 or 15, I can't remember, but yeah, thanks, Susie. His theology of love and his book, Love Wins, he attributes a lot of his foundational thoughts to C.S. Lewis and this book. So as that alone will give you a sort of a hint. So the outline itself is, who is C.S. Lewis? I'm going to breeze through that. So I'll be going, that's why I wanted to control the slides. We'll be going fairly quick. I'm not going to be reading slides, or more for your perusal later. Then we'll get into the background of the Great Divorce, and then really the meat of the Great Divorce, and that's the characters. So as you'll find, C.S. Lewis he goes character by character in each person or character's view of, or actually more accurately, their experience, after death, of what they experience in heaven. I don't like the word hell, so I'm going to avoid that. And then also we'll end up with the applications and the so what. So, okay, given all that, who cares? So we'll have that discussion. Okay, so who is C.S. Lewis? Steve already mentioned this, wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. He also wrote some other stuff. Out of the Silent Planet, he has a sci-fi trilogy that a lot of people don't know about. I love it. Screw Tape Letters, Mere Christianities, to mention some of the others. He went to Oxford, and he fought in World War I. As I mentioned, this was after World War II. He taught at Oxford. And during his time there, he writes about his conversion to Christianity. He was a friend of J.R. Tolkien. And for those of you who may not know, he wrote The Hobbit and all those that those were in the theaters maybe 7, 8 years ago or so. And he married late in life to a person named Joy. He also wrote another book called Surprised by Joy. And that is a beautiful book. If you get a chance, it's about his personal experience of being married to Joy. And then at the second bullet, Joy fought a 4-year battle with bone cancer. And C.S. Lewis wrote a book called A Grief Observed. And we've all had losses in our life at various times. I found this way, it's very salient if you get a chance. It's how he actually experienced grief, and he goes through, this is C.S. Lewis, keep in mind, some very difficult moments in his faith journey. And he died in 1963. So,
day.
what's that?
November the 22nd, 1963,
Yeah.
when Kennedy was shot.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I read that book. Yeah. Okay, so his conversion, he belonged to the Church of Ireland. He separated early from the Christian faith. He just saw it as too rote. He called it boring. I love the quote at the bottom. Had God designed the world, it would not be a world so frail and faulty as we see. So he was an all-out atheist / agnostic early on. He was influenced in Oxford by his friend, as I mentioned, J.R. Tolkien, and a gentleman named Chesterton. And I like this. He fought greatly at the moment of his conversion, and he was brought to Christianity like a prodigal, kicking, struggling, resentful, and darting his eyes in every direction for a chance to escape. And he actually writes this into some of the characters, as we'll see briefly. Okay, so that is C.S. Lewis. I'll slow down now. I just want to give you a taste of his background. So the background for The Great Divorce. How many people have read it, actually, just so I have okay, so as I mentioned, I'm assuming no one has read the book. So you can breathe a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God. The crux of the book, and besides the deeper meanings, which we'll discuss, it's just a fun book to read. It resonates. I think Steve was mentioning, it's about 145 pages. And as you would expect from C.S. Lewis, he writes very simply, as in the Chronicles of Narnia. But as usual, there are deeper undercurrents, deeper meanings. So the book takes the form of a bus ride of all things. And it's where the damned, in quotes, go from hell to heaven. And where the narrator is one of the participants in that, learns that they are offered a chance to stay there, but some ultimately reject it because they prefer, quote, to remain in hell. Okay.
Where all their friends are.
No, that's true. Linda mentioned, I come get some stuff at your house. But, it's where all their friends are. I know but it's true. They stay in it. That point is just right on. They're friends, they're there because they're friends. They're there because they feel belonging, or they're in some sort of rut. And we'll see that in some of the characters that we go through. Key points, there's no judgment. People choose if they stay in heaven and hell. So if you just let that sink in a little bit, and we'll reiterate this as we go. Judgment being from God. God does not judge in this fable, and we'll see that quickly. People choose to get on the bus. They can choose to get off the bus. They can go multiple times. Okay, so it's their choice whether they move up to heaven or they stay, quote, in hell. And as you said, Linda, that's where their friends are. Some of it, and I know we're being a little flippant, but that point is dead on. Some of them just feel, quote, comfortable there, because it's more uncomfortable in some cases to go up, as we'll see. People choose, as I mentioned, God will repeatedly entice them, for lack of a better word, into heaven after they die. God wants everyone in heaven, or in the community of heaven. And
Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you put this on slideshow? Because the slides are still at the same one, the beginning.
Okay.
Thank you, Grant. Okay.
See.
Yeah, it's in slideshow mode, but it's not advancing for you all on Zoom.
Okay.
Steve, any way to do that besides?
Did you see the one that says objective or was C.S. Lewis? I can do it.
We might have to go out of slideshow.
Okay,
You mind if
yeah,
we do that?
no, I don't care what we do, so.
How do we exit slideshow?
Let me see.
Go ahead.
So from current slide. Either Grant or Greg, can you see that?
Yeah, you still have the outline one as the primary one. It's not advancing.
Oh, okay. That's odd.
Where's that share screen?
Okay, just with us here for a second.
We can start it over.
Over
Yeah,
here.
sorry, folks,
It's okay.
you're being so patient too.
Yeah, just be patient with us for a second. We love technology. Can't live without it.
There you go.
Can't live with it.
I know.
Just keep telling yourself that, Steve. Just keep telling yourself.
Well, you can't live without
Well,
it these days. You gotta use it.
And we all have our icon with 2 inches of
Do
us,
the
right?
best you can. Okay, now there's the first one. Do you see it advancing now? Grant, is it advancing now?
Someone's talking.
Yeah, it is. You're advancing the slides on the left, but the big one is not. Okay, now you got it.
Okay.
C.S. Lewis, now we're down. Okay.
Okay,
So,
one.
yeah, you'll just have to manually do that.
Yep, looks like.
We'll do that then. I'll just let you, so we need to go down to see who is, okay.
Can you click it if you want to, and just click on,
Oh, the slide.
click on each slide that you.
Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay,
So let's
thanks for
see
letting-
where, that's great. So we'll go down a little bit. Ooh, don't- No, we are, okay, we're here. Okay, does this, for the folks on Zoom, does it say crux of the book and what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, yay. So let's see. So there isn't any judgment. You know, people will choose if they stay in heaven and hell. God is not a judge. Okay, that's foundational to the book. They choose whether they enter, and as I mentioned, God will repeatedly try to entice folks. And God wants unconditionally for everyone to be in heaven. Everyone. Okay. There's no, again, judgment for him or her, and it's their choice. God is not the judge. God sets emissaries, they're called spirits. The people who are trying or on a journey of their choice, going on this bus, they're called ghosts. And the people that, or the entities that God sends are called spirits. Keep in mind again that this is sort of Chronicles of Narnia, it's metaphorical. So they're just concepts, if you will, don't get caught up in, who's a spirit and who's a ghost. As I mentioned, it's also considered revolutionary. So, oh yeah, okay, I think we're getting it down. Did that advance for the Zoom people to summary?
You have summary up right now.
Okay. Let's see, yes.
Can you make that full screen for us?
Oh.
You're not gonna be able to read it anyway, Jan, the type is too small.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's don't do that, because it'll probably mess up something else.
I'm sorry.
People just read to you what is necessary off there.
Okay.
The type is still too small.
Yeah, my apologies for that. Okay, the summary, then the narrator finds himself in a grim, joyless city. It's called a gray town. That's neither heaven nor hell. It's actually unclear. So but I think to Linda's earlier point, they're there because mostly because they feel comfortable down there. He eventually finds a bus stop. Literally, it's a bus stop, and people are lining up to get on the bus. The bus comes down continually. Okay. And when it reaches its destination, the people or the ghosts, including the narrator, get off the bus, and they find everything on the bus harder. Like the grass is hard, the tree is hard. I think Chronicles of Narnia again. And there's actually some New Testament passages along those lines, where, especially in the epistles by Paul, where Paul says, we're just a reflection of heaven. And as we get into heaven, things will become, quote, more real. Okay. So moving on, the background, all the conversations in the Great Divorce are aimed, and this is the reason why Lewis is doing it, C.S. Lewis, aiming at unearthing the deceptions with which each person has in his or her journey, and whether they decide to go on to heaven or they return back to the bus. Okay. And again, God wants everyone in heaven. So there's about 8 or 9 ghosts, ghosts that C.S. Lewis covers. Today, mercifully, I'm only going to do 4. And there are multiple reasons, and as you're hearing each, as you're hearing each ghost or reading about each ghost, you'll hear what, quote, their hangups are, if I could use that word. Yeah.
Could I just mention, and for those who may be wondering too, in the book, hell is not fire and brimstone
No.
place. It is a gray city where it's cold and people are mean to each other and they're never happy with anything, but they are comfortable being there in this gray city that's dark, and as opposed to heaven, which is beautiful nature, light, friendly people. So just to give you a little perspective on that.
Right.
But I hope you don't mind.
Is
No.
there purgatory where they're deciding where to go?
They're actually deciding on the bus, and as they get up to so the concept, as Steve was saying, is that hell is just, it's a place, and as we'll find shortly, it's a very small place. Heaven is more real itself. So when they get off the bus, they call it, C.S. Lewis calls it the foothills of heaven. Okay. And then they're starting to make so there's not, quote, you don't land in a place in C.S. Lewis's world where you're suddenly in heaven. You're at the foothills of heaven, and these spirits come down that from your past lives, and they're trying to entice you to move up further and further into heaven as you get closer and closer to God. In this case, again, it's metaphorical. So. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Let's see if I can advance this again. Okay. I think I alluded to this a little bit, but heaven is rock hard, unbreakable. There's the bus, and you realize this at the very end of the book. The bus is actually not traveling. Again, this is actually, anyone seen the movies, The Chronicles of Narnia, or read the books? Okay. Okay, just a few. C.S. Lewis in The Chronicles of Narnia has time travel as sort of a key component. In this case, hell is actually, and he describes it as just an atom, in the world of heaven. So rather than traveling somewhere, the bus is actually growing larger, and it's by in C.S. Lewis's theology, it's by grace that the bus grows larger, and then people are allowed into heaven. Yeah.
One of the things he said was that the smallest place is a person all wrapped up in themselves.
Yeah, that's right. That's perfect. Hell, and I don't like the word hell, so we'll just hell is where people are wrapped up in whatever their own deal, whatever that is, and we'll see what the deals are. He describes characters in the book that are made a decision again to go to the foothills of heaven, and each character deals with stuff, if I could use that. There's natural imagery. There are non-human presence or presences or entities. He mentions lions and giants and eagles and unicorns. And there's also an agelessness of the spirits themselves. Oops. Hopefully. Okay. So that's the background of the Great Divorce. The characters themselves are where he spends most of his time, highlight or illustrate a number of common themes. And some of those, the first one, this is actually one of my favorites. Just in the interest of brevity, I didn't choose all of the characters, but he's a bishop, and the bishop follows all the rules. And there's a quote there. He follows all the rules. He's always searching for middle ground, trying to compromise. So, oh, well, if you don't believe that, then how about this? Or, stuff like that. Very, I'll say wishy-washy. He loves debate. He'll sit there, he's sitting there debating with the spirit that C.S. Lewis sends down. And then he's caught up in the nuances of the rules and the guidelines, well, let's see. Now, is there something about this that we need to debate? Because he just loves the theological debates. And the Spirit says to him, heaven is not a place for debate, but a place for answers. And you shall see the face of God. And the Spirit also says, I didn't put this on the slide. I reviewed the book this morning, and he says, we know nothing of religion here. Yeah. So that sort of tells you a little bit about.
The bishop is one that's coming from hell.
Yes,
and
yes.
Debating with a spirit who's in heaven. The spirit is trying to convince him to come to stay in heaven.
Yeah.
Right.
And to actually march up the hill towards heaven itself in the foothills.
So the bishop's in hell.
So the bishop's in hell.
The bishop quote is in hell. Now, again, the word hell is so loaded that, and that's not how, and Steve mentioned this earlier, the brimstone and the fire of oil, whatever, and, sitting there rolling a rock up the hill for all eternity. That is not C.S. Lewis's concept. C.S. Lewis's concept is, go back to the earlier comment, you're there because you feel comfortable, and yeah, it's a dull, it's a lot of grays. There isn't any color, and people are just caught up in whatever they're caught up in. In the bishop's case, he's caught up in the nuances of, the bucket doctrine, just, and I don't mean that, whatever it is, whatever the nuance is, if he's caught up in that. And the next ghost is what's called sort of a hard, well, any comments on the bishop? What do you think of that? Do you agree with that? Do you think it could?
Like the Pharisee.
Oh, it's like the Pharisee. Yeah, oh, that's a good one. Yeah, where Christ came to the Pharisees, and some of his most direct comments, or even negative comments, were at the Pharisees, and they were the leaders of the church. That's a good one. Yeah. Well, what else?
I see it as we're living in this world, it is hell.
Yeah.
Why do we want to stay here
Ah. Okay.
instead of
Yeah.
die and go to heaven?
Right.
Why do we want to?
Yeah, so-
Because we're comfortable, that's where people think the same way.
Exactly.
So we find our
Right.
little niches where.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that you just summarized, and for the people can the people on Zoom hear that? Greg or Lance, can you hear that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. I won't repeat it then. Now, so what do you think? Do you think that's true?
I can tell you it's true because I died and had an out-of-body experience
Uh-huh.
and was offered to go to heaven,
Ah,
but I wanted to stay because of the relationships that I had.
wow, okay,
So,
yeah, right. Yeah, that's,
yeah.
wow. I don't even know what to say to that. Yeah. Yeah, well, that fits in perfectly with this, right?
You mentioned.
I don't have to do the dishes now.
Well.
You mentioned the word doctrinal,
Yeah.
and I think that people that are, teach doctrine
Mhm.
to a certain extent are in a box.
Right,
We're comfortable in that.
right,
We're comfortable in a doctrinal teaching.
Right,
So we
right.
don't seek, if we have questions, we don't ask them, or we're
Mhm.
afraid to ask them because we might be thinking out of the box.
right,
And that might not be acceptable.
Right.
So,
so it's very, very rote, right, right. I grew up Presbyterian, and they had what's called the Book of Confessions. And when you joined the church, boy, you had to read all those confessions. Oh my God, it was like 200 or 300 pages. And it was, and in general, the church is good. But one thing I like about Methodism is it's more interpretation, the quadrilateral, the folks have heard of that. It's more, it's based on reason, obviously the scriptures, but there's an element of reason and allowing some for theology to actually evolve. That's not this person. This person is, oh, no, On page 47, paragraph 2, footnote 2A, it says this, and that's the bishop.
And it's also safe.
It's safe, right? Folks agree with that? Yeah, Jeff?
It sounds also very symbolic, this character of organized religion,
Ah,
not being the answer.
Right,
And that, necessarily following all of those doctrines and
right.
rules and debating
Mm-hmm,
isn't the same thing as having a relationship with God.
right,
Seeing past the gray world of
right,
whatever
right,
into the colorful world. of what we
Right.
do.
right, because you're stuck there, right? And I love Jeff's point, and that is, the answer is not necessarily in religion. That's why I read that quote again. The Spirit says, we know nothing of religion here. Right to the bishop. Okay, so, all right.
That's the spirit in heaven.
Yes, yeah, the Spirit in heaven that was sent down to try to convince the bishop to go up into heaven. Again, heaven is it's a progression in C.S. Lewis's theology or his metaphor. It's a progression of getting closer and closer to God.
Is
Okay,
he the first
So-
character introduced?
I'm sorry?
Is he the first character?
No, he is about the second or third. So I just, for brevity's sake, I cut it down to what I thought were the 4 most interesting.
That makes sense to me because
Yeah.
I think religion is of man, not of God.
Right.
So you think religion is
of
of man?
Man-made rules.
Yeah, man-made rules. Okay. Thoughts on that? I love it, and I agree, by the way. When I'm in a conversation and people know I go to, St. Andrew, and, I do this a little bit. They say, oh, and then immediately, have you been pegged? You say, oh, you're one of those people, right? Oh, Lord.
Progressive.
Yeah, right.
Quick question, Steve. This, C.S. Lewis's vision obviously is different from a traditional evangelical conservative
Yes,
view that you need to say the sinner's prayer and
That's right.
accept Jesus, and then you will automatically go to heaven.
mhm. Right.
Did C.S. Lewis comment on that in?
Not in this book. No, he, not directly. No, he didn't comment as I mentioned in the very beginning, he didn't comment in anything directly. It was all metaphorical. Because, and Rob Bell also said this in his foreword to Love Wins. Because it was so revolutionary.
Yeah.
For the time.
And so
And
he
for the-
also probably thought, C.S. Lewis probably thought that the imagery of fire and hell was symbolic in the Bible, not what God actually
Right,
intended for us
right.
to understand as being an eternal punishment.
Right, and just as an aside, and Jeff and I teach a journey class, but the theology of heaven and hell is not really discussed in the Old Testament or even the New, for that matter. There's a concept of Sheol in the Hebrew Testament. And then even someone mentioned the Pharisees earlier. Even the Pharisees and the Sadducees didn't agree. One believed and one did not. So there was a concept of maybe there's an afterlife, but even among the Pharisees and the Sadducees, there's disagreement. So it was murky, to say the best. Only in the latter centuries in original sin, I would challenge you to come up with a quote or even a passage in the Bible for original sin. I'm not aware of one, and my training also said there's not one. So, but anyway, that's an aside. But your point, C.S. Lewis in the opening slides, he's in the Church of England. The Church of England, as we all know, is an offshoot of the Catholic Church, and boy, they have their catechism, and you have got to follow that catechism and memorize and all this other stuff. So, good discussion, and this is where the value is. It's not in flipping through the slides.
This all kind of reflects back to Amy's sermon this morning.
It was almost perfect.
What can we really know
Right.
as opposed to what we think or believe?
Right. So Bob was, no Bob from Helping Hands, but so Bob was allowing or referencing Amy's sermon this morning. So what do we really know? What do we know? And that's what C.S. Lewis was saying, and he says it even more forcefully through some of the other characters, but it's love. And that's why Rob Bell says, hey, the answer is love. As Christ said, that's the greatest commandment. Okay, I'm getting to just gave the punchline, but that's all right. The second character is a hard-bitten ghost or pessimist and cynical. I love this ghost. Now, again, this is a person that went on the bus, got off the bus. A spirit came down and is trying to convince this ghost to go up into heaven or towards heaven. And you'll see, I think it's in the next slide, but there's a concept. The spirits are just trying to do anything to get the ghost to move towards heaven, okay, to make that journey, to even start that journey. So they're looking for any kernel that may be in that person still to, again, help them to move towards God. But when asked about the beauty of heaven, because again, the spirit asked this, he responded, oh, it's pretty well everywhere. Niagara Falls, the pyramids, the Taj Mahal, not worth looking at. They're all advertising stunts. And then when asked about his past jobs, oh, it's up to the management to find something that doesn't bore us all. It's their job. And I never saw one of those bright mornings that doesn't turn to rain later on. So as you know, from the Chronicles of Narnia, yeah, Lewis speaks so colorfully and again, metaphorically. But what do you think about pessimism, just in general? Do you agree with this? That may keep you from knowing God?
What do you mean? I agree.
What do you think of pessimism in your journey with God?
I agree with it. I've worked with a lot of people, maybe a lot of people think I'm one. But I don't know, but
Right.
who will just drag you down.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Management's not doing this, that, or the other.
Right.
And
Right.
I've even heard something like, good morning. Well, yeah, it is a good morning, but the day's got a long ways to go.
I see the clouds. Right.
That turned to rain later on.
Right.
But those things just drag you down.
Yeah, it
drag
does drag
others
you.
down.
There's a great quote in one of the last slides that I'm gonna reference. And Mason's point is, they drag you down, right? And so the ghost here is they're trying to get the spirit in this case. Again, I can't cover everything in major depth, but the spirit is just trying to find something in this ghost and saying, God is, trying to find something that can latch, that he will latch onto besides his pessimism. Okay. Moving down, oops. The next character that I selected was a painter. I like this one too. The painter was caught up in painting without seeing meaning behind the paints. So he was painting, he was quite a famous painter, evidently. And he was making just these gorgeous scenes. And he became more interested in painting for painting's sake. Excuse me. The spirit says, the success of your painting was that it enabled others to see glimpses too of heaven or God. But here you are, but here you are having the thing itself. It is from here, being heaven, that all the messages came. In other words, he received his messages or his inspiration from God for his painting. And he became so enthralled by his painting, the ghost responds, shall I meet Claude Monet or Cézanne? So he's interested in moving on so he can meet the greats. He can meet the greats, quote, in heaven. And the spirit says, don't you understand? The glory flows into everyone and back from everyone like light and mirrors. In other words, from heaven. So the glory from heaven is what enabled the painter to see greatness, but he became so focused on his painting. So do you think any thoughts on that?
I remember one time Steve and I were in a museum. I think it was Monet in Kansas City.
Oh.
And we were walking around through the display. And I said to Steve, because there were people sitting on benches just staring at the work.
Water lilies.
The water.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
said, what are they looking at? Why are they sitting there for that long,
Mhm.
looking at it, you know? And I just thought, there they are.
Staring at
You
the
know,
Monets,
But
right?
they're just really studying it.
And Bob Eilers, who's a
Yeah,
painter
I-
himself.
no. If you go to Giverny, where Monet
Yes.
lived,
Right.
Yes.
the water lilies are still
Yes.
there, you know, in the bridge.
Yeah.
And you can see it. And the point is that if you look at his painting, it's his interpretation
Right.
of what he saw. And it is different than what's there,
Hmm.
okay? And, if any one of us painted it, we'd all paint it
Differently, right.
And so that's God revealing himself to us
Oh, I
perhaps,
like that.
that
Wow.
we have that vision.
Right, so each person looking at, you know, a presence of God, in this case, nature,
Yes,
will interpret it differently, right?
that's
Yeah.
my feeling, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
And
that's
isn't
great.
it true that he was not happy with the paintings? I mean, he would water them down and start over and then water them down and start over. I thought I remember hearing that.
Monet was quite prolific, and actually, he made about 2,000 paintings and sold a lot of them. Because he also was an early entrepreneur and making a living from it.
Mhm.
So the question is, was his repetition an effort at perfection? Or was it just production?
Okay, yeah, interesting.
One of my, this feeds off of what you were just saying. One of my gurus, Steve knows this, David Brooks said,
Oh, yeah.
because of everything going on around us in this world, that periodically we need to go to art museums, to do just what you were describing,
Mhm.
to get some people would say a spiritual uplift, just to sit and look at what's being represented. So,
And David Brooks,
what you're saying.
and David Brooks has a great book called Second Mountain.
Yeah.
If you, okay. And, oh, I'm sorry.
But it seems like this guy got too caught up in his work
Yeah, he
and
did.
forgetting that God was the
That's
one
it.
who was
Yeah.
allowing him to do it.
Did everyone hear that? He got so caught up in his work, he lost sight of God. That's exactly it. I couldn't have
Yeah,
summarized.
I was thinking the same, exactly along that same line, is that we get embroiled by the task instead of looking at the mission. And we forget about what the mission is a lot of times, and that, I think that's the picture and the beauty of the picture and the message that was sending was the mission, not the paint stroke itself.
Exactly. And I love Bob's thought that, you know, everyone has their own interpretation. So, you know, it's one person can see one thing, you know, the Monet view of things, Cezanne will see something else. Degas will see something else, yeah, or one the realist, and he or she will paint it very real. So, okay. So again, there were about 8 or 9 characters, and each one, C.S. Lewis is drawing this so that you can have these little aha moments, at least, you know, as we're hopefully having in this discussion, and I had as I read the book. Okay, we're on should say the ghost with the lizard for the folks on Zoom. So this, I love this one. And this is the last one in the book. So a ghost comes with a lizard on his shoulder. And the lizard, the ghost with the lizard, the ghost says, it would be better to be dead than live with this creature. He says that, okay? And I forgot where I got this, but you can see a picture with a guy there sitting there with a lizard on him. And the lizard whispers in the man's ears while the spirit is talking. Okay, while the spirit is talking. And he says, he's talking and he reminds him of his fears, his rationalizations or rationalizing or excuses. Okay. So everything that the metaphorically the man may think would keep him from going up into heaven. And the man actually struggles with the lizard. And C.S. Lewis actually spends quite a bit of text on this. The spirit actually offers to kill the lizard. Okay, and he says, "Do you want me to kill the lizard?" The spirit is telling or asking the man or the ghost. And the man says, well, you know, he's with me, he's been with me so long, you know, et cetera. And yeah, I'll control him afterwards. And it goes on for about 5 or 6 pages. And then the spirit asks again, he asks about 3 or 4 times. And he asks directly, I will kill the lizard if you want. And the lizard, as you see on this, is huge. Okay, and man's actually very very small in frame. Okay. And he says, well, I don't know, you know, we've been together so long, you know, stuff like that. And the spirit kept saying, I will kill this lizard for you if you want. Okay. And the man finally chooses for the lizard to die. Okay. And the spirit and actually I wrote this a little incorrectly. The spirit in this case is an angel. Okay. And C.S. Lewis calls him an angel. And the angel actually kills the lizard and the lizard dies. And it's written beautifully. And at that point, the man is recreated. Okay, he's recreated, and also the lizard is recreated. Okay, the lizard becomes a stallion. Again, this is all metaphors, of course. And the man hops on the stallion, and just beautifully written. He says, and the stallion is carrying the man in the mountains towards heaven. And this is a direct quote, like a shooting star, scaling, impossible steps so high that I can strain my neck to find them. So high that I have to strain my neck to find them. And just, you know, beautifully written. And, you know, this is a case where the ghost in this case says, you know, I think you're right. And the lizard is killed. And, you know, to the earlier comment of, you know, we each have our thing, whatever that thing is, could be comfort, you know, as Vicky was saying earlier. And in this case, there you see actually what happens to the man. So any comments or questions on that? Thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question, and as everybody knows, I missed the first part. Of
Oh, it's all right.
the
No,
presentation.
that's.
And they're building a new church out on Castle Pines, Castle Rock.
Oh, right.
And the name of it is Journey
Oh, yeah.
Church. Is that where it comes from? Is Journey from hell to heaven?
I'm not.
But it's a popular place. It's a non-denominational,
Ah.
and wherever they've been meeting, it has it's grown and grown.
Oh, wow.
They're gonna build a really big, nice church. I think 2 years completion.
I'm not familiar with that church, so I wouldn't want to comment, you know, officially.
But I mean, the word, it's a
Journey,
journey,
yeah,
must
yeah.
be very important that their church is called that.
Right, yeah. I would imagine. So, yeah, I like the concept of just in general, the journey, you know, we're on a journey to learn.
That they covered that in the article.
Oh,
Where
okay.
But I guess they're so popular, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter, everybody knows.
Okay, yeah.
I like the lizard because the lizard was so controlling. And then when the man finally said, okay, I'm taking control. get rid of
Yes,
this
no,
lizard,"
that's right.
And he's on the horse.
Right.
And he's leading his life as
Right.
opposed to being overrun.
Right. The way you describe that is really important. So and all of the spirits actually are talking. Oh, there's another one where there's a very small ghost, and there's a huge person attached to him. And in this case, in fact, in this case, the spirit is actually talking not to the spirit is trying with each ghost to speak to that ghost and get them to make a decision. And in this case, it's the lizard. Okay. And the person actually makes a decision whether to stay, whether to actually start moving it towards heaven. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's another, Jeff.
I was just sitting here wondering why we're so hesitant to kill the evil.
No.
We can have heaven on earth.
Well, let's look in the book of discipline and see what it says.
but we keep holding on to it, or we
Yeah.
go back to. the
Right,
evil.
right,
Why is
right.
it such a?
Why is it so hard?
Heaven is, we get glimpses of heaven, but we're
Right.
not quite sure that that's all real.
Right,
Even in the art, or think of what we
Right,
do, the
right.
glimpses in nature that we get of heaven.
right,
And we're all awed by a rainbow or a beautiful
Right,
sunset or, and the glimpses, but we don't know what else there is.
In C.S.,
So-
and I'll get back to, in C.S. Lewis's book, Surprised by Joy, he calls, he says, surprised by joy for his wife, and also joy of seeing glimpses of God.
Right.
And if, for folks were here when Marcus Borg spoke, he calls the glimpses thin places.
Yeah.
Those are thin places between heaven and earth. Okay? And these are all thin places.
Right.
Okay, where the spirit is trying to convince whoever it is, hey, look beyond yourself, right?
If C.S. Lewis was a true atheist, he couldn't have written this.
Oh, no, he converted. No, he
Yeah.
converted. He converted actually on the bus. Of all things.
Yeah.
And that's what you just,
Yeah.
what you just said. Looking beyond yourself,
Mm-hmm.
looking beyond yourself. If you believe that, people create a personal hell. What you said earlier,
That's a perfect quote. People create a personal hell. That's
people are wrapped up in themselves.
right. That's
Okay,
right.
that's one symptom. Jean-Paul Sartre, who wrote the play No Exit, you've seen the play No Exit, said hell is other people.
Certainly.
Hell that we sometimes create
Right. It can be.
is the interpersonal,
Right,
intrapersonal
right.
conflicts. And so in that sense, people can create a hell.
Oh, yeah.
certainly here on earth, just by virtue of two pieces.
Yeah, that's great.
Quoting Sartre.
But
He was quoting Sartre. That was his original exorcism. Yeah.
I saw
That was
other
other
hands.
people, yeah.
Yeah, on the, no, Jeff, you had a comment?
Oh, yeah, and just on that, if hell is other people, we are then hell to those.
Right.
This is hell, yeah.
Yeah.
I think of.
It's as bad as it gets.
You're
Right.
just describing it being symbolic. We don't want to kill the lizard because the lizard is us. That's our self.
Right,
That's
right,
how we treat ourselves. And it's hard to kill that. But if we do die to that and
Right.
create a different way that we treat ourselves, instead of having this ugly burden of a lizard on your shoulder, you ride the stallion forward.
Right. I want to make sure that we heard what Jeff said. The lizard is us.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the metaphor in the book, the lizard and the man or the ghost are what? Okay. The lizard is a metaphor of the man's, whatever his,
Self-talk.
yeah, self-talk,
His ego.
His ego could be anything that keeps us from God. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mason.
There was another, I believe it was a ghost, there was this young lady who her son had
Oh,
passed
yes,
away.
right,
And
right,
she was, I honestly kind of felt sorry for her, but I
right,
could kind of see the point of that being in here about she was so fixated because the
Right.
little boy had died, this sounded like years and years ago.
right,
But she had like made a shrine out of his bedroom or something
right.
like that, and the spirit was trying to tell her that you
right,
kind of need to let go of that a bit,
Right,
and move
right.
on.
Yeah.
You know, that was, I agree, that was a terrible thing that happened, but you can't keep,
Right.
Fixated.
Yeah, what Mason is referencing is another ghost spirit. And the ghost is a mother whose son died and went to heaven in this case. We find that out. And again, I just couldn't put them all in an hour, but the mother is fixated, absolutely fixated on that son. And the spirit who comes down is not the son, but it's someone who knows both of them. And the spirit is telling the mother, and her son is already, moving up the mountain towards heaven, that, very lovingly, it will come across a little harshly, but, hey, we have to, you have to let go of your son, essentially. And that's hard. So, and your son is in heaven, essentially. Okay, I wanna,
We've got about 5 minutes left. Steve, do you mind if I ask the Zoomers if they would like to make a comment or
Sure.
question so they don't feel like they're interrupting us?
Okay.
Anybody on Zoom? What do you think about heaven and hell? Do you believe in it? Do you think C.S. Lewis is right? How about anybody here in the room? Please share. I'll share with you real quick. We don't talk a lot about heaven and hell here at St. Andrew, but when Vicki and I moved from Kansas City, our previous church there was a Methodist church called Church of the Resurrection. It's the largest Methodist church in America, and the pastor there did talk about heaven and hell, and his opinion was they are real places, but that hell is not fire and brimstone. That was figurative language that Jesus and others used to make a point, not to be literal about it. But that his opinion, Rev. Hamilton, is that there will be some place that people will go together that for folks who do not want to go to heaven and be with God and live in that atmosphere. If they want to stay with each other in a different place, there will be some kind of place like that, that it will be open to them to come to heaven and make a decision because God wants everyone to be with him. And so his opinion is very close to C.S. Lewis' views. And so I've always thought that was kind of interesting that Lewis would have written this 60, 70 years ago. But
Paradoxically, people would say, oh, what the hell, let's go to heaven.
we're gonna all vote you on that.
let me ask real quick, how many folks here think heaven is a real place, a real physical place that you go to afterwards? Okay, about half of people, I believe it's two. How about, where were you?
Oh, I believe it, whether it's physical, I don't.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, that's
What
right.
about
That's
the
state of mind.
report that Jesus said, I go to prepare a place
Place for you.
for you?
Yeah.
Any comments about, was that a false report?
There is an interesting thing in the book of John where it's after the famous quote about, eternal life. If you want eternal life, you have to come through me. Later in the next chapter or two, Jesus says what eternal life is, and he just says it's to know God. So it doesn't necessarily have a place or a.
Good point. And then you have folks like Ron here who did have a near-death experience.
Wow.
A thin place and experience with God and we have other folks in the church here too that believe that was a real experience and a real place. And that's where we're going after we die.
Yeah, but you can also argue that's just a neurological,
Yes.
chemical
Yeah, that's-
experience.
But that's all we have.
Yes.
That's all.
Right.
It's all reality, it's all mediated by our.
Could be, we don't know for sure. Linda, go ahead.
I've always thought we make our own heaven and we make our own hell.
And that's what C.S. Lewis would say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I basically believe that. On the other hand, I sort of hope there's something on.
Something better.
You hate it if you created that image for people of a place and they were striving so hard and to get there, like that striving would almost be their purpose. I think sometimes by saying, yes, heaven, you've got to strive to be in heaven, or you've got to, sometimes I think that makes it hard for people. Because then they're constantly trying and trying and trying but they never know. So to be at peace with yourself, to know that whatever it is that God's prepared for us is what God's prepared for us,
My experience is those people have a whole list of criteria that they feel like they need to
Exactly.
Right.
exactly.
meet. And they're not much fun to be around.
No, they're not. They can be very fearful.
And I think all Lewis would say is the only criteria is love.
That was, yeah. hard.
I have a question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to get my head around purgatory. Was the bus purgatory? Is that, is?
C.S. Lewis doesn't go into that. He just, again, it's metaphorical. So,
Microphone.
oh, sorry.
The question is purgatory and heaven and hell. Heaven was portrayed as running up a mountain and, you know, getting closer and closer to God. Hell, in quotes, was just your comfort zone, essentially, being with, quote, other people. Okay, you're in sort of this dark gray area. And the bus is growing in size. So to answer your question directly, Lola, there's purgatory wasn't really explicitly covered, at least not to my knowledge. So.
We need to wrap up, but we will revisit this sometime soon when Rev Jerry Butler is going to talk about the view of heaven and hell by the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is, you know, the Catholic Church started in the very beginning, and then the Eastern Orthodox broke off from that the centuries afterward. So it'll be a different kind of discussion. They have a different perspective, but we'll revisit this. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. See you next time.